Hey there. Well, I'm sitting in Tokyo, and the Narita Airport. I am on my way to Malaysia, and then from after teaching there a few times and meeting with local leaders and some missionaries who use our rock solid, laying a foundation on unshakable new covenant grace. I will be going on to the west side of Borneo. Malaysia owns a strip of land there on the west side, and the church that I primarily work with in Penang is planting churches in that area. So I'm going to be going over there and working with pastors who are planting grace-based churches and do a conference for them, and that's going to be a great delight. You understand that most of these people, since I have a daughter who's 49 and a son who's 47, soon to be 50 and 48. Of course, I'll soon be 70, so that'll tell you the numbers game there. But most of these leaders that I'll be working with while I'm on this 3-week trip are younger than my own children. So this is a tremendous delight to be able to do this. But most of you have probably been watching news or getting it on the internet or something about the coronavirus. And I know to us in the United States, it may appear that people are overreacting, but they are reacting indeed. First of all, my flight through Hong Kong was canceled. No U.S. flights now can go to Hong Kong, can't go to Seoul, Korea. South Korea can't go to Shanghai or Beijing or any of the other places that are even near China, let alone in China or owned by China. So what would have been just 2 flights for me turned out now to be 4. And what would have been about 20 air hours has now turned into well over 30. And then, when I get to Singapore, I'll just be staying in the airport there and sleeping somewhere. They have some nice fold-out chairs and that sort of thing, so you can do that in Singapore. But many of the shops are closed down. The economy in Hong Kong and other parts of China is taking a tremendous hit. In Hong Kong, all the McDonald's, Burger King, all the fast food restaurants are closed. Schools are closed. And many of the bigger department stores are closed. Shopping malls closed, many of them. And I'm pretty certain that it's only going to get worse. Everywhere I've gone since I left St. Louis, then to LAX, and then on to here in Tokyo. Everywhere I've gone, everybody has been wearing a mask of some kind. How effective those are, we're not sure, but I'm wearing one. As some of you know, I got a very rare infection a couple of years ago and damaged my lungs, and so I have scar tissue in my lungs, and I get pneumonia 2 to 3 times a year. Just got over 2 weeks of a really nasty bout of pneumonia. So I'm trying to be wise and be extra careful. However, I did not cancel this trip. I'm sure that if it was in mainland China, I would have had to have been forced to. They're not allowing that right now. But it's affecting the stock market. It's affecting a lot of things around the world, but especially, of course, here in Asia. But when you talk to people over here, they're afraid, and that gives you a wonderful opportunity to share some hope with them and even to pray for them. And I've had some wonderful experiences already, looking for a lot more. One other thing on world news, if you don't mind. If you do, you can just shut this off. But and that is, be praying for the nation of India. I'm not a big one about worrying about territorial spirits. I know they're out there, up there, in there, but I don't think it's our job to deal with them. But be praying that God would influence the outcome of this next election, which is happening very soon. The Indian government. Now, I'm not going to India anytime soon, or I wouldn't be making this public. But the Indian government has the prime minister now of India, from what I understand from missionaries and reading news reports, is a very radical Hindu. And because of that, you've probably been reading that huge humanitarian organizations like Compassion International have been completely thrown out of the country, which has left literally millions of orphans with no care, no support, no nothing. And in certain parts of India, there have been hundreds and perhaps by now thousands of church buildings burned to the ground, pastors slaughtered, widows and orphans left behind. It's not been this bad in India for who knows how long, maybe never. But this is all either directly sponsored by the government or they just close a blind eye. Now, the government is trying to pass a law that will only allow immigration into the country based on religion. And of course, they are considered a democracy, and they do have a constitution that currently allows for freedom of religion. But when the government closes their eyes to what's happening and even encourages violence, then we see what's going on. So certainly we should be praying for them, absolutely, for God to do something in the government so that the gospel will not be hindered. I'm not praying for judgment at all. We're praying for favor and the goodness of God to move on those hearts. And having dear friends who minister regularly, planting churches, teaching pastors, using our materials throughout India to do that, because we do have Rock Solid now in 14 languages. 2 of those languages are Hindi and Tamil, the 2 major languages in India. So Rock Solid is being used in many areas. And we pray for those people. And you know what? Those of you who are partners and friends with us, we pray for you too, and we want you to know that. So be praying for us, like Paul said, that the Lord will give me an ability to make clear the mystery of Christ living in and through us.